Senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky in Lviv, Ukraine for us once again. Also, ABC's Phil Lipoff across the border in Poland, and our Alex Prichet here in Washington following everything from the White House. Aaron, let's start with you. We just got word the third round of negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian delegates. It's now ended. What came out of the conversation?
There were no breakthroughs, Kira, but there was, according to one of the Ukrainian negotiators, a commitment to keep talking at least, and maybe some progress on humanitarian corridors. We know they are desperately needed. The Ukrainians do have humanitarian relief supplies stockpiled. We've seen them with our own eyes, but they need to be guaranteed safe passage in order to get them to the hardest hit urban areas where they're so badly needed. Places like Mariupol, where there's no food or water or medicine or electricity or reliable phone service, and where people haven't been able to escape. So if there really is some progress on humanitarian corridors, it can't come soon enough.
So, Aaron, still, there are so many Ukrainians that don't want to leave. So how are they surviving, and what are you hearing behind the reasons of them not wanting to flee, even as hundreds of thousands of people are trying to evacuate?
I think you heard it reflected in your conversation with the parliamentarian. There's a real pride and a real determination to stay and fight. There's a determination not to live under the thumb of Russia anymore. We've heard that over and over from people who are picking up weapons and learning how to make Molotov cocktails and doing all these things that 2 weeks ago they didn't imagine that they would ever be doing. But so many others have made the choice to leave because it has been far too dangerous for them or their families. We know that more than 1.7 million people have crossed an international border, and it's been so dangerous for civilians who are trying to flee. They've come under fire. Over the weekend, there were supposed to be some safe passages arranged by the Russians, but the shells kept falling in the besieged port of Mariupol, and now staying is no better. So the hope is that they'll be able to go, but there's real doubt here that the Russians are serious about preserving civilian life. Just today, the Russians offered safe passage to Russia in what the Ukrainians believe to be a cynical ploy. Kira.
So, Aaron, you were listening to Kira Reddick, the parliamentarian, and clearly a very strong woman. I'm curious what you thought about what she said, that these Russian soldiers have been reporting back to members of her party that they thought they were coming on this liberation movement, that Ukrainian women would be throwing themselves at the troops. And she said, yeah, the only thing that we'll be throwing are Molotov cocktails. You actually showed us that firsthand last week, how they've been making Molotov cocktails out of these beer bottles. What have you been hearing? Have you been hearing also that Russian troops have been coming in there questioning why they're even there?
Yes, we've heard those reports from the front lines that Russian troops were told maybe they were going on some exercises, not coming in to invade their neighbor. They didn't quite know what was going on, and that is reflective of how the Kremlin tries to control the messaging, telling troops you'll be greeted as liberators, and that's far from the case. The fight has certainly surprised the Russians, and defense officials in the West believe that is only going to make things worse for civilians as Vladimir Putin tries to break their spirits with increasing attacks on residential structures and on civilian infrastructure where ordinary people work.
All right, so Alex, President Biden spoke with our European allies this morning. Also, Secretary Blinken, we've been following everything that he's been saying, appealing to Russia to end this war right now. As the situation gets more desperate, are you starting to hear anything new when it comes to the U.S. response?
Well, Kira, we're expecting a readout of that meeting that President Biden had with some of our allies. It wrapped up a little more than an hour ago. And so that'll give us a little bit more inkling as to where the White House is headed on this. But we have heard this messaging from Secretary of State Blinken, who's began what's been described as a lightning visit to Baltic states. He again condemned this Russian war against Ukraine and actually appealed directly to Vladimir Putin. equating what Russia is doing to Ukraine to what Nazi Germany did to Russia back during World War II, which resulted in the death of then Putin's one-year-old brother. And so you're seeing a direct appeal to Russian President Vladimir Putin there. But in terms of support, we've heard about some of the weaponry that's been sent to help Ukraine. 17,000 tank weapons sent out by the U.S. and NATO in record time. There's also been discussion of Poland supplying Ukraine with planes that would then be backfilled by the U.S. There's still a lot of debate as to how Russia would interpret that. And I will say that we have had reporting that the Poles are a little bit nervous as to how Russia would interpret that. So still no movement on that front, but definitely seeing a ramp up in support with these anti-tank weapons.
All right, while we have you, the White House also said it's considering banning oil from Russia and may even move ahead independently without Europe's approval. What are you hearing?
Well, Kira, this is something that we knew the Biden administration was against from the outset, right? They had levied sanctions that we haven't seen thus far. But the one thing they hadn't pulled the plug on or hadn't pressed the button on was sanctioning Russian gas and oil. And part of the reason was because they were worried about how that would affect gas prices here at home. But also, what does that do to the Biden administration's clean energy? I can tell you that a White House national security advisor said this afternoon to ABC News that it's up to each country or bloc of countries as to how they proceed on that.
All right. And Phil, thank you for your patience. Finally to you, and talking about all the images of these trains packed with Ukrainians leaving their home country. 1 million people have had to flee. They've come over to Poland. Tell us more about what you have been experiencing, seeing. Are the resources keeping up with the amount of people that are coming into country? I mean, it's just extraordinary that this just has not slowed down in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, a lot of this is really extraordinary, Kira. More than 1 million across the border here in Poland, and more are on the way. What happens once refugees get here? What's in front of them is different. Each individual refugee has a different path they take when they get here. First, there's the original panic, and we need to get out of our country and get to safety. They cross the border, and then they're here to safety, and they think, well, what happens next? Where do I go? Well, the Polish people and the Polish government have been incredible with that, opening their own homes, finding empty flats, empty homes for the refugees. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Oksana, who we introduced you to over the last, she and her family left 2 nights at the hotel here, and they left to go to Malta today. They flew to Malta because they have a support system there. Tatiana, her sister, who is the mother of little Timko we introduced you to yesterday, she doesn't have the right passport to get there, so she and her family need to find shelter here in Poland, and they did. 3 trains and a car ride later, they are at a home 300 miles from here where they'll be able to stay, I don't know about indefinitely, but for the immediate future.
Wow. Phil, Aaron, Alex, thank you all 3 so much. We will continue the conversation clearly throughout the day and throughout the rest of the week.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.